So, have you ever wondered what goes into chocolate? Maybe you've read the ingredients, right? There's sugar, there's oils, there's cocoa butter, there's cacao beans, and there's some emulsifiers in there, right? But have you ever wondered what exactly else goes into there? Have you ever thought perhaps the people behind it who work to make the chocolate? And why that whole line of people behind this delectable product might not be getting treated that well? I want everybody to know that the production of chocolate and the people behind it should be a very big consideration when buying this product. Firstly, I'm Dan. I'm an ecology major who has a very big interest in our food and our food system. I've made many papers about the luxuries like coffee and chocolate and spices. And many of my papers go into detail about the ecological impact, but also the impact on the people behind these products. And I myself, as a chocolate lover, I hope to reveal some new information about the state of our fellow humans because they honestly aren't in the best condition. They work in very tragic conditions, and the cost of their cheap labor is so much more than we know. And so I want to go into the countries that produce this chocolate, how the consumption in America of chocolate plays a major role, and then the real cost of cheap labor in the chocolate industry, ultimately. And so with that, here are some countries that produce a ton of chocolate. Countries like Ghana and the Ivory Coast produce enormous amounts of chocolate every year. This is pretty well known. In the ICCO, the International Cacao Organization here, they track many countries' chocolate production and specifically cocoa bean production. And they say that Ghana, for example, produces 771,000 tons in 2020 and 2019, around that much cocoa beans. The Ivory Coast produces 2,105,000 tons. And then countries like Brazil, Nigeria, and a few other countries produce 201, 250 for Nigeria. You get the idea. These countries produce a ton of chocolate each year to keep up with the demand of the market of cocoa. But have you ever thought, why do these countries produce so much cocoa and how do they produce so much cocoa? Well, this is the how of some of that chocolate. The real thing is that a lot of these countries that produce these enormous amounts of chocolate can't necessarily do it all by themselves. The Bureau of International Labor Affairs have done many investigations, and they suspect ultimately that a lot of these countries that I listed before, Brazil, the Coast of Ivory, Ghana, Cameroon, Nigeria, etc., a lot of these countries use child labor and forced labor. And as we can see in figure 1 or in figure 2, a lot of these countries do in fact use child or forced labor. And in figure 3, we can see that this child and the adult next to them are somewhere in these countries. I don't necessarily know which country, but they are in a country that is producing chocolate and cocoa. And you can see them that they are cutting up enormous amounts of cacao pods. And this is just an example of child labor, which isn't very kind often to children. And often child labor and forced labor go hand in hand. Ultimately, the conditions that these people are subjected to aren't very good and often involve major violence. And it's so unfortunate and so disgusting. And so, we as Americans, I feel, have a big responsibility. So, what role can we as a consumer make to try not to perpetuate this? Ultimately, we in America firstly consume a lot of chocolate. We consume so much chocolate. 9 kilograms per person, in fact, in 2019, as the Swiss platform of sustainable chocolate um, estimated. We consist of a big portion of the market, and we as Americans have the power to make a lot of ethical decisions. As stated by Glave, Gio, Engelsath, and Buvek, a group of researchers that examined in their studies that our decisions do in fact lead to the distribution of rewards and conditions to unethical behaviors and exploitation. And so with that being said, there are some other practical issues. Often accessibility is a big issue, and price. Price is one of the biggest issues because oftentimes some people just need cheap things. And like Brown AL, Bakke AJ, and Hoffer H stated, price was a big determining factor. And so even though this is a luxury, people do want it cheap. But I would want to say that even though this is a luxury, I do think it's important to get it humanely. I think we should be spending more money in order to keep these people out of, or rather to keep the people that are producing our chocolate in better conditions. They need better conditions because they are suffering under the capitalism and under the consumerism that we experience and our demand for chocolate. And so chocolate is really not the dreamy product that you think it is. It has a big story of exploitation and struggle behind it, but you should work towards that dream. And we as a collective should work towards a dream in which these people can also dream. And so I implore you to research chocolate brands and to get better chocolate. Thank you.